Ladies and gents, picture this. You're sitting at a cafe, drinking your coffee when a buddy calls they need a favor again, without hesitation. You say yes, even if it means canceling your plans, missing your workout, and adding another layer of stress to your already full day. Sound familiar? Here's the hardener. Here's reality. Being good to everyone frequently means being unkind to yourself. Now we're flipping the script. What if I told you that the key to taking control of your life isn't about being nicer to others? It's about being kinder to yourself. This isn't about abandoning compassion or turning your back. The people you care about, it's about reframing what kindness actually means. It's about setting boundaries, honoring your needs, and reclaiming your time, energy, and peace of mind. Because here's the thing, you can't pour from an empty cup if you're constantly giving to everyone else. What's left for you? It's time to stop being kind to everyone at the expense of yourself. It's time to take control of your life. Let's dive in. When we talk about kindness, is often an unspoken assumption. Kindness means putting others before ourselves, sometimes to the point of neglecting our own needs and desires. This idea has been ingrained in us from a young age. Lessons about sharing, helping others, and maintaining peace in relationships. While there's undeniable value in empathy and compassion, kindness is often misunderstood as going out of our way to ensure others are comfortable, even at our own expense. Ooh, it isn't at our own expense. Perception can lead us to sacrifice our boundaries, suppress our authentic selves, and sometimes lose sight of who we are entirely so. What if kindness could be something different? Self-respect, boundaries, and personal integrity. Self-respect isn't just about saying no when something doesn't feel right. It's about deeply understanding and appreciating our own worth, recognizing that we deserve the same respect we so willingly give to others. When we prioritize self-respect, we begin to see kindness in a new light. Instead of being solely outwardly focused, kindness becomes a value we turn inward. It means treating ourselves with the same consideration, compassion, and fairness we extend to others. We realize that our needs and boundaries are just as valid as anyone else's, and respecting them isn't selfish. It's essential for maintaining a relationship with ourselves. Personal boundaries are a key. Why being too kind can hold you back. Part of this redefining kindness. Borders are the invisible barriers that preserve our emotional, mental, and physical well-being. When we set boundaries, we create a secure zone for ourselves, where we may express who we actually are, free from the urge to conform or satisfy others' boundaries. Allow us to show up in the world as our real selves, not as versions shaped by the expectations and needs of others. Establishing boundaries isn't about shutting others out. It's about letting them know what we can and cannot take. This is an act of kindness to ourselves, because it saves our energy, maintains our sense of self, and eventually helps us to contribute more meaningfully. When we choose to do so. Setting boundaries can be challenging, especially when we've been conditioned to believe that kindness means being agreeable or easygoing. We might worry that setting boundaries will make us seem selfish or unkind, or that it will create conflict in our relationships. But true kindness doesn't mean avoiding discomfort at all costs. It means being honest and upfront about our needs, even if that honesty leads to difficult conversations. In fact, it's often more respectful to both ourselves and others to be clear and assertive rather than saying yes when we don't mean it, or going along with things that don't feel right, when we hold back our truth out of a misguided sense of kindness. Kindness. We're not actually serving others. We're creating a facade that can lead to resentment, exhaustion, or even burnout. When we commit to this redefined form of kindness, we also take on a new level of responsibility in our relationships. It's a responsibility to be clear about who we are and what we stand for. This allows those around us to understand us better, fostering deeper connections based on mutual respect. People come to know our limits and in turn have the opportunity to respect them. In this way, boundaries actually enhance our relationships. They allow us to connect with others from a place of wholeness. Rather than from a place of depletion or sacrifice, we can engage with others without losing ourselves in the process. Respecting our boundaries also helps us develop a deeper sense of inner peace. When we constantly put others' needs above our own, we often end up feeling frustrated, used, or taken for granted. But when we start honoring our own limits, we create a foundation of self-trust. We know we can rely on ourselves to protect our well-being, and that we won't allow ourselves to be pushed past our comfort zones for the sake of others. This self-trust is empowering. It allows us to face challenges and navigate relationships with confidence, knowing we are in control of our own lives beyond strengthening relationships, and in peace, reframing kindness as self-respect and limits may have a huge influence on our personal growth. When we stop bending over backward to please others, we free up mental and emotional space to focus on our goals, desires, and interests we might spend on activities that genuinely fulfill us, rather than those that deplete us. By committing to our own growth, we give ourselves permission to evolve and become the best version of ourselves without guilt or self-indulgence. And as we grow, we naturally become more capable of helping others from a place of abundance rather than depletion. This kind of kindness isn't about abandoning compassion for others. It's about realizing that compassion must include ourselves. When we're clear about our boundaries, we actually capacity to show up for others in a meaningful way. We're no longer giving from a place of obligation or resentment, but from a place of genuine care, and others can sense this difference. They recognize that when we choose to be there for them, it's because we truly want to be, not because we feel pressured to do so. This redefined kindness, rooted in self-respect and boundaries, creates a ripple effect. It inspires people to respect themselves as well, to set their own limits, and to engage in relationships from a position of wholeness. In the end, kindness isn't about losing ourselves to please others. It's about honoring ourselves so we can genuinely connect with the world around us. People-pleasing is a behavior many of us are familiar with, whether we realize it or not. It's the tendency to prioritize the comfort, expectations, or desires of others over our own, often at the expense of our personal well-being and authenticity from a young age. Many of us learned that being good or kind means accommodating others, going along with signs individuals are taking advantage of you, what they want, and avoiding acts or remarks that can create discomfort or conflict. Innocent or even beneficial individuals, people-pleasing, can lead to a life of constant self-seek compromise, eroding our sense of identity and personal power. The irony is that in trying to make everyone else happy, we often end up feeling disconnected, resentful, or even lost. One of the biggest challenges with people-pleasing is that it becomes a deeply ingrained habit. It's not just about saying yes to others' requests. It's a mindset that shapes how we interact with the world. When we're in people-pleasing mode, we're a constant lie, scanning for what others might want or expect, even if they haven't explicitly said it. We anticipate their needs and adjust our words, actions, and even our personalities to fit the image we believe will make them comfortable. This can lead us to hide parts of ourselves, avoid expressing our true opinions, or make choices that don't align with our values. Over time, these small sacrifices accumulate, and we begin to lose touch with who we are, all for the sake of trying to be liked or accepted by others, breaking free from people. Pleasing starts with realizing that our worth is not dependent on how much we accommodate others. Too often, people-pleasing stems from a deep-seated belief that we must earn approval to be valued. We might feel that saying no or asserting our own needs will make us appear selfish or unkind, but real kindness isn't about self-sacrifice. To the point of self-neglect, real kindness honors both others and ourselves. Own needs and desires as much as we value those of the people around us. When we recognize our worth independent of others' opinions, we no longer feel compelled to bend ourselves to fit every situation. We become grounded in who we are, understanding that our value is intrinsic, not conditional, or breaking the habit of people pleasing also requires us to embrace discomfort. Often we people please because we fear conflict or disapproval. We worry that if we don't go along with others, we'll create tension or hurt feelings, but discomfort is a natural part of any authentic relationship. When we're honest about our boundaries and needs, it may cause temporary discomfort, but it leads to deeper, more genuine connections in the long run. We give others the opportunity to see us as we truly are, rather than the version we think they want to see. Yes, some people may not respond well to this shift, especially if they're accustomed to us always saying yes. But those who truly value us will appreciate our honesty, and our relationships will become stronger and more balanced. Another important aspect of breaking free from people-pleasing is learning to articulate our requirements freely and confidently. For many people pleasers, the idea of saying no can feel daunting, even terrifying. But expressing our needs isn't a selfish act. It's a necessary part of maintaining our mental and emotional health. When we say yes out of obligation or fear, we're not truly present or engaged. We're simply going through the motions, often feeling resentment or exhaustion by saying no when we need to. Create space to say yes to the things that genuinely matter to us. We're able to invest our time and energy in ways that feel fulfilling and aligned with our values. This transformation can be immensely freeing as we begin to realize that we have the capacity to create our lives according. Priorities rather than being at the mercy of others' expectations. Learning to let go of people pleasing also involves releasing the desire for continual validation. While we're in people pleasing mode, we frequently seek acceptance or praise as a method to feel good about ourselves. But that this external validation is ephemeral and unreliable. One moment we might receive praise and feel on top of the world, the next we might face criticism and feel devastated. Relying on others for our sense of self-worth keeps us in a state of emotional dependency, constantly seeking the next hit of approval. To feel validated instead, we need to cultivate a sense of self-worth that comes from within. This means recognizing our own accomplishments, celebrating our strengths, and accepting ourselves fully, flaws and all. When we build this internal foundation, we're less affected by others' opinions, and we're able to stand strong in our own sense of worth as we work to break free from people-pleasing. Also essential to give ourselves grace and patience. People-pleasing is often a deeply ingrained behavior, one that we may have been practicing for years, even decades. Changing this pattern won't happen overnight. And there will likely be moments when we slip back into old habits. But each time we assert our needs or set a boundary, we're taking a step toward reclaiming our authenticity. We're reminding ourselves that our well-being is just as important as anyone else's, and we're building a new when we're building a new habit, one of self-respect and empowerment over time. These small acts of self-assertion add up, transforming our relationships and our sense of self. The process of breaking free from people-pleasing is ultimately a journey towards self-liberation. We stop living in reaction to the importance of setting a others' expectations and start making choices that reflect our true desires and values. We grow to be comfortable with who we are unabashedly, and we begin to attract partnerships that match this newfound authenticity. People-pleasing may have once served us as a coping mechanism, a way to navigate. relationships, or seek acceptance. But as we grow, we realize that true acceptance begins within. When we accept ourselves fully, we no longer need to mold ourselves to fit the expectations of others. We're free to be exactly who we are. And in that freedom, we are. And in that freedom, we find a deeper sense of fulfillment and peace. Embracing discomfort is one of the most transformative steps in personal growth. Yet it's also one of the hardest to take as human beings. We're wired to seek comfort and avoid pain. It's a natural survival instinct. But in our modern world, this instinct often holds us back more than it helps us growth. Rarely happens when we're in our comfort zones. In fact, it's the moments when we step into discomfort, face challenges, and confront our fears that we find the greatest opportunities for growth and change. Accepting discomfort isn't about understanding that the route to becoming the best version of ourselves frequently needs us to address things that make us uneasy. Pain comes up in numerous ways: dread of failing, fear of rejection, fear of not being good enough. These are common fears that can paralyze us. Pattern and behaviors that feel safe but limiting. But when we start to lean into these uncomfortable feelings instead of running from them, we gain a kind of power over them. Discomfort isn't something to be feared, but something to be understood and even respected. Every time we face discomfort, we improve our resilience. We prove to ourselves that we're capable of handling challenges, and over time, these experiences establish a foundation of inner strength and confidence that can't be disturbed by the external conditions. One of the first stages in embracing discomfort. Shifting our perspective on failure. So often we avoid taking risks because we're afraid of failing. We think that failure reflects poorly on us, or that it means we're not good enough. But failure isn't the opposite of success. It's a necessary part of the journey toward it. Each time we fail, we gain valuable insights, learning what works and what doesn't, refining our approach. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable to failure, we open ourselves up to growth. We stop seeing failure as a dead end and start seeing it as a stepping stone. This shift in perspective transforms our relationship. Discomfort because we no longer see it as something to avoid at all costs. Instead, we see it as a vital teacher that guides us toward our goals. Another important aspect of embracing discomfort is recognizing the power of uncertainty. Life is inherently unpredictable, yet we often strive to control. Every aspect of it. We plan, we organize, and we try to predict outcomes. But in doing so, we limit ourselves. When we're unwilling to step into the unknown, we miss out on countless opportunities for growth and transformation. Embracing uncertainty demands us to let go of our drive for control. The process is about surrendering to the fact that we can't always know what's going to happen next. And that's okay. When we become comfortable with uncertainty, we develop a kind of mental flexibility that allows us to adapt to change with greater ease. We become less fearful of the unknown. Fearful of the unknown because we understand that it holds just as much potential for good as it does for bad. We open ourselves to the surprises and unexpected gifts. Life has to offer things we would have missed if we had stayed in the safety of our comfort zones. Addressing suffering also involves acknowledging our own limitations and weaknesses. It's easy to focus on our strengths and avoid areas where we struggle, but true growth requires us to address our weaknesses, to acknowledge the parts of ourselves we might not be proud of. This can be incredibly uncomfortable because it forces us to confront our insecurities and shortcomings. But in doing so, we gain a deeper understanding of ourselves. The work necessary to become better embracing discomfort also applies to our relationships' growth. In relationships often requires us to have difficult conversations, set boundaries, and express our needs and vulnerabilities. These actions can feel incredibly uncomfortable. Because they make us feel exposed and open to rejection. But avoiding these uncomfortable conversations ultimately keeps our relationships shallow. When we're willing to embrace discomfort in our relationships, we create the potential for deeper, more meaningful connections. We allow ourselves to be seen for who we truly are, and we give others the opportunity to do the same. Yes, there's a risk involved. Some how to say no without feeling guilty relationships might not withstand this degree of honesty. But those that do grow stronger and more true accepting discomfort in relationships reminds us. Vulnerability is not a weakness, but a virtue that fosters true connection. Another important benefit of embracing discomfort is that it cultivates resilience. Each time we face a challenging situation, we develop the skills and mindset needed to handle similar challenges. In the future, discomfort becomes less intimidating because we know we have the strength to overcome it. We stop avoiding challenges and start seeking them out. Because we understand that each challenge is an opportunity to grow stronger. Resilience isn't something we're born with, something we build one uncomfortable experience at a time. As we build resilience, we gain a kind of inner fortitude that enables us to face life's inevitable ups and downs with grace and composure. We become less reactive, less shaken by setbacks, and more confident in our ability to navigate whatever comes our way. Finally, embracing discomfort teaches us to be patient with ourselves. Growth is not a linear process. There will be setbacks, plateaus, and moments when progress feels slow or non-existent. But when we embrace discomfort, we learn to accept these moments as part of the journey. We stop expecting perfection from ourselves and start appreciating the progress we've made. However small, this patience allows us to stay committed to our goals and our growth, even when things get tough. We learn to trust that as long as we keep moving forward, however slowly, we're on the right path. Embracing discomfort is ultimately about freeing ourselves from the limitations that fear and comfort impose on us. It's about stepping into the fullness of who we are, unafraid to face challenges, take risks, and make mistakes. It's about recognizing that discomfort is not something to be avoided, but something to be embraced. Development, strength, and self-discovery. The path may not be easy, but it is through suffering that we realize our full potential, and in doing so, we become the person we were always intended to be. Choosing authenticity over external acceptance is one of the most freeing decisions we can make. In a culture that continually tells us how we should appear, act, and think, being true to ourselves can feel like an act of rebellion from a young age. Many of us are conditioned to seek approval from others, parents, teachers, peers, and later on colleagues in social circles. We're encouraged to conform into certain molds and to adhere to societal norms. While fitting in can offer a sense of comfort and security, it often comes at a high cost. The sacrifice of our authenticity. When we prioritize approval from others over being true to ourselves, we slowly chip away at our own identity. Beliefs. We end up living lives that look good on the outside but feel hollow on the inside. Authenticity means showing up in the world as our true selves without the masks or personas we often put on to please others. It requires us to embrace who we are at our core, our values, passions, quirks, and imperfections. This isn't always easy because it means being vulnerable. It means exposing parts of ourselves that may not align with what others expect or want to see. But authenticity is the foundation of a fulfilling life because it allows us to build a sense of self-respect and integrity. Live authentically. We don't feel the need to seek constant validation from others. Our sense of value comes from within, from knowing that we are living in harmony with our actual selves. Choosing honesty also entails letting go of the fear of condemnation, fear of judgment. Seek external approval in the first place. We worry about what others will think of us, how they will view us, and if they will accept us. This fear can lead us to censor ourselves, hiding aspects of our personality, interests, or beliefs to fit into what we believe is acceptable or admirable. Fear of judgment keeps us trapped in a cycle of self-betrayal. We're constantly adjusting ourselves to fit into different situations, losing touch with who we actually are in the process. When we emphasize authenticity, we realize that not everyone will understand or approve of us. And that's all right. Approve of us. And that's all right. Learn to be comfortable with the fact that we won't resonate with everyone, and that our value is not reliant on others' acceptance. Another critical aspect of authenticity is learning to trust our own intuition and judgment in the quest for external approval. We often defer to others' opinions, allowing them to dictate our choices and actions. We seek advice, feedback, and validation, hoping that others will give us the answers we're looking for. But no one knows us better than we know ourselves. Authenticity requires us to tune out the noise and listen to our inner voice, trusting that we have the wisdom and insight to make the best choices for ourselves. This doesn't mean we can't seek guidance or advice when needed, but ultimately, we take responsibility for our decisions. When we trust ourselves, we become less reliant on others' approval, because we have a strong sense of who and what we stand for. Living authentically also requires courage, because it often means going against the grain. Society has a way of setting standards and norms that we're expected to follow, whether it's in terms of career choices, lifestyle, appearance, or beliefs. When we choose to be authentic, we may find ourselves at odds with these societal expectations. We might feel pressure to con or to follow a path that others deem successful or respectable. But authenticity asks us to chart our own course, even if it means taking and building confidence and self-respect unusual route. This courage to stand out and pursue one's own path is what sets authentic individuals apart. They're not driven by the need to fit in. They're driven by a commitment to their own truth. And while this path can be challenging, it's also incredibly rewarding, because it leads to a life that feels meaningful and fulfilling. Choosing authenticity over approval also has a profound impact on our relationships. When we're not being true to ourselves, our relationships lack depth and honesty. We may find ourselves surrounded by people who only know the version of us that we've presented for their acceptance. But these relationships are fragile because they're based on a facade rather than genuine connection. When we embrace authenticity, we allow ourselves to be fully seen by others, and this opens the door to deeper, more meaningful relationships. Because we're not hiding behind masks or pretenses, we attract people who resonate with who we truly are, rather than those who are drawn to a version of us that's curated for approval. Authenticity creates a foundation of trust and respect in relationships, allowing for true connection and mutual understanding. Another powerful effect of prioritizing authenticity is that it inspires others to do the same. When people see us living our truth, it gives them permission to do the same. Authenticity is contagious. It encourages others to let go of their own masks and embrace who they are. This creates a ripple effect, fostering a culture of honesty, openness, and self-acceptance. By being true to ourselves, we contribute to a world where others feel safe to do the same. We show that it's possible to live a life that's aligned with our values and passions, regardless of societal expectations or others' opinions. In this way, authenticity becomes an act of leadership and service. Encouraging others to live in alignment with their own truth, prioritizing authenticity, also leads to greater personal fulfillment and satisfaction. When we're constantly seeking approval, we're never truly satisfied because external validation is fleeting and unreliable. We might feel a temporary sense of accomplishment when others praise or admire us, but it doesn't last. Authenticity, on the other hand, provides a deep sense of fulfillment that comes from within. It's the satisfaction of knowing that we're living in alignment with who we are and who we are and what we. This kind of fulfillment is sustainable because it's not dependent on external factors. It's rooted in our own sense of purpose and integrity, which cannot be taken away by others' opinions or judgments. Finally, living authentically allows us to fully explore and express our potential. When we're constantly seeking approval, we limit ourselves to what is deemed acceptable or admirable by others. We play small, afraid to take risks or pursue passions that might be misunderstood. But when we prioritize authenticity, we give ourselves permission to dream big and pursue our fear of judgment. We become free to explore our talents, creativity, and aspirations, knowing that our worth is not tied to others' approval. This freedom allows us to reach our full potential, tapping into abilities and passions that might have remained dormant if we were focused on pleasing others. Authenticity empowers us to live boldly and unapologetically, creating a life that feels true to who we are at our core. Setting and maintaining boundaries is one of the most essential skills for a fulfilling life. Yet, it's also one of the most challenging. Boundaries are the invisible lines that define what's acceptable for us, what we're willing to tolerate, and what we need to feel respected and valued. They protect our emotional well-being, our time, and our energy. However, in a world that often glorifies self-sacrifice and prioritizes the needs of others over our own, setting boundaries then feel uncomfortable or even selfish. But healthy boundaries are not selfish. They are acts of self-respect and self-care that allow us to show up in our lives as our best selves. When we create limits, we're making a clear statement about what we value and what we need to flourish. Establishing boundary starts with self-awareness. We need to understand our own limits, needs, and values to set boundaries that truly support us. This requires us to spend time reflecting on what feels right for us and what doesn't. Often, we might feel drained, resentful, or overwhelmed without fully understanding why these feelings are often signs that our boundaries are being violated or neglected. Recognizing these signs can help us understand where we need to set or strengthen our boundaries. It's important to remember that boundaries are deeply personal. They're unique to each individual and can vary based on personality and goals. There is no one-size-fits-all approach to setting boundaries. So we must honor what feels right for us without comparing our boundaries to those of others. Setting boundaries also means communicating them openly and assertively. This can be one of the most challenging aspects of boundary setting because it requires us to be honest and direct with others. Many of us fear that setting boundaries will lead to conflict, disappointment, or rejection. We worry that others will view us as difficult or uncooperative, but effective communication is the key to maintaining healthy boundaries without damaging relationships. When we communicate our boundaries clearly, we help others understand our needs and expectations, making it easy for kids to respect our restrictions. It's crucial to communicate boundaries in a way that's courteous yet forceful, making it apparent that we're serious about keeping them. One of the biggest misunderstandings regarding boundaries is that they're about controlling others. In fact, limits are about accepting responsibility for ourselves. We cannot control how others behave, but we can control how we respond. Setting a boundary doesn't imply we're forcing someone else to change it. It means we're deciding what we will or won't allow. For example, if someone frequently interrupts us or disregards our time, creating a barrier can imply letting them know that we want our time and ideas to be. To take control of your life, continue to cross that boundary. We may opt to restrict our connections with them. Boundaries empower us by reminding us that we have options and that we're not required to accept conduct that disrespects us. Maintaining limits is just as crucial as creating them. Boundaries are not a one-time act. They take ongoing effort, and reinforcement. Individuals may challenge our limits, either purposefully or unintentionally, and we need to be prepared to stay firm. This can be tough, since it frequently entails reaffirming our limits in situations. We're allowing them to adapt to our present requirements and situations. This flexibility is especially vital in long-term partnerships or professional contexts, where dynamics may change over time. By periodically reassessing our boundaries, we guarantee that they continue to serve us and support. Our well-being. Setting limits is also about creating room for self-care. When we don't create boundaries, we often wind up overcommitted, feeling fatigued, and disregarding our own needs. Limits. Spending time with loved ones or following our passion. Self-care is not a luxury. It's a need for our mental, emotional, and physical health. When we prioritize self-care via boundary setting, we're better equipped to show up fully in our lives and relationships. We're able to contribute from a position of abundance rather than depletion, allowing us to contribute more meaningfully to the people and activities we care about. Another important benefit of boundaries is that they help us cultivate self-respect and confidence. Each time we set and maintain a boundary, we're affirming our own. Reminding ourselves that our needs and values matter and that we deserve to be treated with respect. This self-respect translates into greater confidence because we know we have the power to protect ourselves and advocate for what we need. When we respect ourselves, we're less likely to tolerate behavior that undermines our well-being, and we're more likely to attract relationships and opportunities that align with our values. Limits are a form of self-empowerment that allow us to stand tall and live in harmony with who we are. Or creating boundaries also requires us to manage guilt and overcome people-pleasing tendencies. Many of us struggle with guilt when we set boundaries, fearing that we're letting others down or coming across as selfish. But boundaries are not about denying others. They're about honoring ourselves. It's okay to prioritize our own needs and well-being. Needs and well-being. Feeling guilty. When we let go of guilt, we free ourselves from the pressure to constantly please others, allowing us to make choices that are aligned with our values. This shift is liberating because it reminds us that we're responsible for our own happiness, not the happiness of others. Boundaries allow us to serve others from a place of choice rather than obligation. Creating and keeping boundaries is an act of self-love. It's a way of expressing, I value myself enough to safeguard my well-being. Limits create a secure environment where we can grow, thrive, and pursue our objectives without being burdened down by the expectations or demands of others. They help us to focus on what's actually important to us rather than constantly responding to external pressures. Boundaries remind us that we have a right to live life on our own terms, and they give us the freedom to create a life that feels authentic, balanced, and fulfilling. Embracing the power of self-acceptance is one of the most profound and life-altering choices we can make in a world that constantly emphasizes improvement, accomplishment, and transformation. Self-acceptance is often missed or misinterpreted as final thoughts and next steps complacency. Yet self-acceptance is not about abandoning ourselves to who we are now without the drive for growth. Rather, it's about learning to completely embrace ourselves as we are in each moment. It involves recognizing our own worth, faults, strengths, and limits, and accepting them